Welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody had an opportunity to get up, stretch their legs, put their arms up, get their feet up, grab something to eat, drink. In fact, my question is, what's a pirate's favorite food? Arby's. You like that one? Okay. Well, next up, we have our keynote speaker, Maddy Dychtwald of Agewave. Recently recognized by Forbes as one of the top 50 female futurists globally, Maddy Dychtwald has been deeply involved in exploring all aspects of Agewave and how it's transforming the marketplace, the workplace, and our world, our lives for the next 30 years. Along the way, she has become an internationally acclaimed author, public speaker, Wall Street Journal blogger, and thought leader on longevity, aging, the new retirement, and the ascent of women. A successful entrepreneur, Maddy co-founded Agewave, the world's leader in understanding and addressing the far-reaching impacts of our aging population. The Agewave team has worked with more than half of the Fortune 500 companies in industries ranging from healthcare and medical technology to financial services and consumer marketing. She is the author of 3 books and is currently writing her 4th book, which combines her professional and personal passions. It's called Ageless Aging. So we ask you, Maddy, take it away.
Thank you. And it's such a pleasure to be here today. I really appreciate you inviting me. Truly an honor. So before we get started today, I'd like to ask you all to do me a favor, and that is to take your preconceived notions of aging and longevity and retirement and just park them to the side for the next 35, 40 minutes so that we can focus on a new kind of aging, a more ageless aging. So what does this look like? Well, we're going to explore that here today. Each and every one of you, whether you're working in the field of aging or aging yourself or both, I'm hoping that we all walk away today feeling a little bit different about aging and the opportunities that it provides to each and every one of us. So the way we're going to do this today is that we're going to take a look at these 4 powerful and converging trends that are changing each and every one of us individually and the world at large. So let's begin by taking a look at this whole idea of longevity. Now, most of us know that people are living longer and better than ever before. And we also know that COVID had an impact on this. It took more than a year off of average life expectancy. However, longevity experts do tell us that they believe that that's just like a blip, that longevity will continue to rise. But let's take a look at it throughout most of history. What you can see by looking at this chart is that in the past, most people didn't age. In fact, average life expectancy was under the age of 18. And 2/3 of all people who have ever turned 65 are alive right here and now. So let's fast forward to the last 1,000 years and let's look at that trends line. And you can see again that in the past, people did not age, they died. And the fear was dying young. And that's the way life was through most of history. But then something happened. The 20th century was a huge transformation. We saw a huge transformation take place. What we saw happening was life expectancy skyrocketed. So that on the first day of the 20th century, average life expectancy was only 47. On the last day, it had skyrocketed all the way up to on average 78. So what caused this? Well, lots of things. For one, we recognize that sanitation had a lot to do with staying healthy longer. We learned about antibiotics and penicillin and other kinds of medical breakthroughs helped us to make this happen. So that today, this is a new world, a world of longevity. And as you can see by looking at this chart, women are doing better in the longevity game than men. They generally outlive men by about 5 years. Uh, I was in Alaska a bunch of years ago, speaking at the governor's conference on aging, and the audience was filled with feisty older Americans. And I made the statement that women outlive men by about 5 years. And I added to it, I said, in that 80 plus age category, for every 100 women, there's only about 38 men alive. And there was a woman in the audience sitting right up front. She's probably in her 70s, very attractive. She stood up, she pounded her hand on the table in front of her, and she said, yeah, and I've met a lot of those men. They're not very alive at all. So yeah, I am poking a little fun at men. So sorry, guys, but I say it in good humor, really. And what does it really mean? What it means, for one thing, is what can we do to help men live longer, better? And second, it means that women, many women, are left alone at the end, the last years of their lives. They become what we call solo agers. And there's risks in aging alone. It means you potentially, not necessarily, but potentially have more social isolation and loneliness. And these are proven to impact our life expectancy and our health expectancy. And we're going to talk a little more about that in a few minutes, but those are some of the challenges that both women and men face as they live longer lives. So one of the questions that comes up when we think about long life has to do with, well, how do we even define what is old? When we started AgeWave back in 1986, and by the way, as a sidebar, at that time I was in my 30s. So if you do the math, you can figure out I am now 71 years old. So what started out as investigating the field of aging and the trends that come out of it has turned into a personal thing for me too. I not only am interested in this professionally, but personally, it affects me directly. By the way, just for those of you who are not familiar with AgeWave, I want to let you know that AgeWave has been in this area of expertise, aging, longevity, retirement, doing studies, doing research, being on the cutting edge since 1986. And we've recently done a series of studies during COVID. And today I'm going to share with you some of the findings from our most recent studies. So back to this question, how old is old? What are you thinking in your mind as you're sitting there listening to me, watching me, hopefully? What age do you think of as old? Well, for many people, that number is 65. And that is an incredibly powerful number because you could get off a plane in Paris or Melbourne, Australia, and just by dialing that number up or dialing that number down, you could completely transform the economy of a country. So it's a powerful number. So where did it come from? Well, it came from this guy, Otto von Bismarck. He created the very first pension plan in Europe in the 1880s, and he chose the number 65 as the marker of old age. Now, keep in mind, at that time, average life expectancy was only 45 in Europe. So Otto von Bismarck was a very interesting actuary. He chose a number that he thought very few people would ever get to. And if we were to use Bismarck's formula today, we would mark our old age and many of the benefits that come along with it as being somewhere in the 90s. Now, I'm not suggesting we do that, but it's an interesting thing to keep in mind. So what else? What does aging look like today? Let me show you a couple of examples. Here's Shelley Keeling. She's 69 years old. She's a practicing attorney and a professional runner. And I think we can all agree she looks pretty great. But if you think she's pretty great, let's take a look at her mom, Ida Keeling, 105 years old in this photo. And what's particularly interesting is Ida didn't even start running until she was 67 years old. So the possibilities are endless. What this tells us is that people can really reinvent themselves at any age. Let's look at John Glenn. He did not reinvent himself. He was a former US Senator, a former astronaut, but at 77, he traveled into space. And what I find particularly interesting is that when he came back, rather than the media embracing him, they gave him a little bit of a hard time. They said to him, hey, this is just a publicity stunt. I mean, come on, really? And John Glenn's answer was one that has really made him my hero. He said, hey, just because I'm 77 doesn't mean that I don't have dreams. That message has always stuck with me. The idea that who can you be as you get older is a very real one. Richard Branson embraced that question. He took John Glenn's model, and at 71, he just this past year flew to the edge of space. And I'm sure Richard Branson plans on doing it again and again, and maybe even going further. So what we each have to ask ourselves, and what we have to ask our culture is, well, how do we live a more empowered and ageless kind of aging? And let me add, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. There's going to be different kinds of aging, different kinds of quests that each and every one of us go after as we continue to live long and hopefully live well. And we're going to talk about some of the issues that we face as we live long and live well in a few minutes. But let's move on to this second converging trend, and that has to do with demographics. Now, I happen to love demographics, and you might look at me and say, that's crazy. How could you love demographics? Well, what I love about demographics is they give us a window into our future, because we're living in very unpredictable times, with COVID in particular, incredibly unpredictable times. But demographics are totally predictable. And we're going to take a look at aging demographics. But let me give you a little bit of the headline first. And the headline is this baby boom generation. They are transforming aging demographics. People born between 1946, 1964, 73 million people have become part of the age wave. So let's look at the changing population segments over time. If we look from 2010 into the future, 2030, what we can see is that the real growth in population is taking place in the oldest segments of the population. Now, that's different than what we've ever seen before. We always thought that youth is where the growth is, youth is where the action is. Well, maybe not so much anymore. This is a real transformation. And what makes it particularly interesting is the boomer generation has always, at every step along their lifespan, been change agents. So that we know that the boomers, today's older adults, and tomorrow's, they're not going to look a lot like yesterday's older adults. Now, let me be clear about this. The boomers love their parents and their grandparents and respect them and have gone out of their way in most instances to take care of them and help them through their aging process, but they don't intend to age like them. Let's remember they've transformed the whole idea of marriage more than once. They've also transformed the world of work. And they also, the whole idea of the way we access books and information has completely been transformed by the boomer generation. So recognize the fact that they are going to be reinventing aging and longevity. And as a result, many of the aging services, including senior centers, are going to need to think about reinventing themselves as well, so that they can be more purposeful in this whole new kind of aging that we're beginning to see. So let's keep going. Let's build on the story. So if we have this longevity bonus and this new generation of aging adults, we have to ask ourselves, if we have these 30 extra years, where are we going to put them? How are we going to use them? These are essential questions that we need to ask ourselves. Throughout most of history, we've lived our lives in a very linear way, and it was very defined by aging and by gender. And I have some pictures that I'm going to share with you in a minute. But first we learned, then we worked, then we got some time to rest and retire. So the pictures, we got a chance to learn mostly when we were young. In fact, almost exclusively in the past when we were young. Then we grew up, we fell in love, we got married, and we primarily did that just once. And when we were young, built a family again when we were young, very strong division of labor. A husband went off to work, a wife took care of house and home and kids, very strong division of labor. Husband retired, got a gold watch. Husband and wife went on a cruise, and then they probably died. And that was the linear life plan. Again, very age defined, very gender defined. But now we have that longevity bonus, that extra 30 years of life. And the question that I'll ask each and every one of you is, well, where do you want to put that longevity bonus? Do you want to just sort of tag it on to the end of life so that you get to feel, and I mean feel, older and older, and the things that we generally associate with traditional aging, frailty and vulnerability? When I ask people this, very few people say yes to that. Instead, what they say is they want to take that longevity bonus and distribute it throughout their lives. So what does that look like? It looks like people going back to school when they're 40 or 60 or 85. It looks like people having second, third, maybe even fourth and fifth careers. If your first relationship doesn't work out as great as you expected it to, you have a chance to have a second chance at that, and frankly, a second chance at life. It's about this idea of reinvention. So let me dive into that for a minute. Just to give you an example of what it could look like. I have a friend, he was a dentist in his early 60s. He came up to me one day and he said, you know, Maddy, I'm considering something and I wanted to talk it over with you. I said, great, what's up? And he said, well, as you know, I'm a dentist. I've had a great lifestyle, great run as a dentist, but I'm thinking of giving it all up. And I'm like, well, why? I mean, are you thinking of retiring? Because he was 60. And he said, no, I feel too young to retire. Instead, I want to do something different. I go, well, really? Like, what's making you think about doing that? And his answer is one that has always stuck with me. He said, you know, I decided to become a dentist when I was 18 years old. I'm not going to live with an 18-year-old's decision the rest of my life. I want to go back to school. I want to do something different. And you know what? He did. He went back to school, became a psychologist, and now he's a practicing psychologist. So the idea of reinvention or re-engaging in a new way, reigniting your life, these are very real possibilities in this longer life that we all are getting the opportunity to experience. So let's keep going here. Let's take a look at this whole idea of matching health span to lifespan, because we're hopefully at the tail ends, but have been living in this COVID reality for a year and a half, and it has really made each and every one of us think about health span and lifespan a little bit differently. But let's dive into this subject matter. So in one of our studies, in one of our more recent studies, we asked retirees, tell us, what's the key to a happy retirement? And hands down, it was good health. So we know that health span, which is how many healthy years of life that you live in, is certainly as important as lifespan. And it's something that we want to keep expanding if possible. At the same time, we know that as one gets older, we're more likely to get chronic degenerative diseases, diseases that in some instances are preventable, In other instances, maybe just delayable, things like heart disease and high blood pressure and stroke, diabetes. That's what we're really talking about here. We know that health span is a very important issue for each and every one of us because we're all aging. And that on average, 10 years of our lives, at the end of our lives, are spent in poor health. And the question becomes, what can we do to change that? Or are there things we can change? And I think these questions have become even more urgent during the COVID pandemic. 93% of retirees told us in one of our most recent studies done in the middle of COVID that it is never too late to improve your health. So most of them told us they knew the right things to do, but they didn't necessarily do it. There is this, what we at AgeWave call an intention action gap, with only 55% of retirees saying they even maintain a healthy diet, even though they know what a healthy diet looks like, and only 52% exercise regularly. So these are just two examples of some of the things we can do to expand our health span to better match our lifespan. And this is a place where social services and senior centers can really play an important role. Okay, so how do we improve wellness in this new normal, in this COVID era where people are still scared about getting together physically, and yet we know that, for instance, social interaction is one of the things that help keep us healthy and well. Well, I'm going to talk about 5 different things that we can do. And by the way, this is a place where senior centers and the whole aging community can really play an important role. So let's begin by taking a look at ageism, fighting ageism and ageist stereotypes. Now, we all know that ageism may in fact be the very last ism that's almost acceptable. It's kind of in the very air we breathe. Even older people oftentimes feel ageist inside them. They may feel, for instance, that, oh, I'm too old to try something new or to learn something new or to get involved in sports. Well, that's not the case necessarily. This is an example, by the way, of advertisements that were done by the city of Boston. They were trying to take away the myths of ageism. They showed people who were cranky, who were definitely not cranky, very much not inactive, very much not frail or over the hill, and dismiss these ageist thoughts that are around us, these stereotypes that we end up living with right here and right now. And by the way, you might say, okay, well, so people are ageist. What's the big deal? Well, it actually impacts the health of individuals. There was a Yale study that was done. They showed that there's a direct connection between holding ageist attitudes of older people and your life expectancy. They also saw that it affected mental health, in particular depression. So let me show you an example that I think of as a great example of someone who's really trying to change this whole ageist attitude. And this is Lynn Slater. Now, Lynn Slater is 64, and you can see she's on Instagram, but she's also a professor at Fordham University. And what she says to her Instagram followers, which is more than 500,000, is, I'm not 20, I don't want to be 20, but I'm really super cool. That's what I think about when I'm posting a photo. So this is like reversing this whole idea that aging isn't something you want to embrace. It's taking a whole new attitude about it. Let me show you another example of someone taking on aging in a brand new way without even thinking about it.
Madonna Buter, an 86-year-old nun. Oh, sorry, sister. Sister Madonna Buter, 86 years old, goes for a morning run. Good for you, sister. She's still active at her age. That's great. Whoa, maybe a little too active. Nap time, sister?
I don't think so.
The sister doesn't think so. Okay. Wait, what? Iron Man? Oh, no, 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 no. This is a bad idea, sister. A real bad idea. Somebody
Relax,
stop.
she's the Iron Nun.
But she won't make it. This is an Iron Man.
The first 45 didn't kill me.
You've done 45 of these? Okay. Do your thing, sister. Do your thing.
So what I love about this ad is it's not just showcasing somebody in their 80s doing something remarkable. It's that Nike is embracing it and helping to change this image of aging. What else do we know? Well, I think we all know that emphasizing fitness and wellness is a very important part of successful aging. In fact, there was a study done that showed that if you were to do just one thing, and by the way, it was the MacArthur studies on successful aging, and that would be just walking 30 minutes a day, that would be the best and easiest way to bring your youth with you into that second and third part of life. So, and by the way, you guys already know this and are doing things to make that happen. For instance, I love these longevity stick classes that are taking place at Westminster and Fountain Valley. It's a unique exercise program that's fun and embraces the whole Vietnamese culture. So that's incredible. And it's also something that other senior centers may look at and say, yes, we ought to be doing a program, this program, or something similar to this program. So we know that fitness and exercise is one side of the equation. So the other side, or one of many other sides of this wellness issue of increasing health span to better match lifespan, has to do with what we eat, the food we put in our bodies. Now, let's face it, our bodies are machines. I love what Michael Pollan says. He says, eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. Now, that's pretty simple. I would also say that recently we've seen everybody begin to talk about and think about the idea that it's not just what you eat, but when you eat that really matters. And that has to do with maybe after you eat dinner, not eating anything until the next morning. So that's just one small example of what you could do. I personally eat an anti-inflammatory diet. Now, I started eating that because I was having horrible pain in my hips. And ultimately, I had to get a hip replacement in both my hips at the same time. And I asked my doctor, well, what can I do to prepare for this and to have a good recovery? And he said, nothing, go buy a cane. And that wasn't part of my plan. I didn't want to do that. So I did some research and I discovered that there's this kind of diet, anti-inflammatory. It's pretty simple. It's really just no dairy, no gluten, and no or little sugar. And I embraced that diet. And within 6 weeks, all the pain that I had felt in my hips, and it was terrible pain, had gone away. I still did get the hip replacement because I was bone on bone, but it really made a huge difference. And I would say that what we put in our mouths really feeds all of our cells, and something that we should really think about continuously. And, realize, you don't have to be perfect, but doing the best you can is going to make you feel better and healthier. What else are we seeing? Well, we're seeing this whole idea of brain health really come front and center, and innovating with brain health programs at senior centers is really something that you're already doing. Like, for instance, I know at Mission Viejo, you have a learning program on the Constitution. That's a great way of learning, great thing to learn. Learning new languages is a big deal. And during COVID, this whole idea of brain health has even become more of an issue. In our study that we recently did, we found that even during COVID, the most feared condition of later life is Alzheimer's and dementia. And by the way, as we get older, we're far more likely to have to deal with cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease. And We have every reason to fear these, but there are some things that we can do, many of which we've already talked about, like diet and exercise are certainly there. But we also know that women are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's disease as men. There's also other kinds of programs that we can do that you're already doing, and that could be embraced by other senior centers. This virtual drumming program that's being done in Newport Beach, it's pitched as solo sheltering in silence, which I thought the idea of virtual drumming classes was fantastic. By the way, any kind of learning a musical instrument is good for your brain. It also creates endorphins in your system, similar to those that are created through running. So these kinds of programs are amazing. What else are we seeing? Well, we're seeing this is a huge issue, this whole idea of social connectivity. And during COVID, a lot of us were afraid to leave our houses, afraid to interact with people. And now that the vaccine is available, that's beginning to change a little bit. So the idea of reconnecting in your senior centers is becoming more likely, and certainly something that we should all really encourage. One of the things we know for sure, based on studies that have been done, is that low social interaction is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So this is a real issue, and it's an issue that senior centers and the social services community can really help make a difference about. It's as dangerous as being an alcoholic and as harmful as never exercising. So this is something that we need to all pay attention to, twice as dangerous as obesity. Now, with solo aging really on the increase, especially for women who live longer than men, it's something we really need to pay attention to. In one of our studies, we asked people, what's the biggest loss in retirement? We asked pre-retirees what they expected to be, and we asked retirees what it was for them. So first, let's look at pre-retirees. When we asked pre-retirees what they thought the biggest loss was, they said it was reliable income. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. I mean, a couple extra years of working and earning an income can make the world of difference. It makes a lot of sense. But then we asked retirees what they thought the biggest loss was. They said that the biggest loss in retirement were social connections, followed by reliable income. But this idea of interacting with each other becomes more and more important. And as we get older, the sources for doing so become less and less. So we've got to encourage it. Of course, senior centers is one of the obvious places that we can make that happen. So that's not just a great example of the importance of social interaction and family in particular. It's also a great example of purpose, because purpose is the next thing we're going to be talking about. And purpose, by the way, the number one reason people find purpose is through their family. That's from one of our most recent studies. Let's take a look at purpose. 92% of retirees say purpose is a key to successful retirement. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could mean maybe just walking your dog or being responsible for another kind of pet. 93% of retirees say it is important to feel useful in retirement. And they say that actually being useful helps them to feel youthful. So those two concepts are very tightly connected. Yet 31%, almost a third of new retirees say they have a struggle finding a sense of purpose. Let me show you an example of a group of older adults in a retirement community who found purpose with a group of kids from Brazil.
Hello, hello.
Melissa.
Hi, Dick. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
It's the first time that I'm talking with someone from another country.
I'm very excited to be doing this.
I look like I'm only 25, but I'm 88.
I'm living with my old brother. He has 23 years.
Do you know, instead of saying he has 23 years, you could say he is 23 years old.
I tried to go to Lollapalooza that we have next week, I think, in Brazil, but my mom didn't let me.
You got a good mom.
Good morning, dear Julia. Good morning to you.
This is your dad?
That's me and my wife when we were young.
Oh, you were good looking when you were young. And you're still good looking.
If you could just dream and have whatever you want, what do you think you would like to be doing?
I see myself in a big family, with a beautiful wife. I want to thank you for this change of experience, You are incredible.
Obrigado.
You are my new granddaughter.
And I love you.
I love you too.
And if you were here, I would give you a big hug.
Oh yeah, let's hug. Oh. Bye.
Bye.
So by the way, these are the kinds of programs that you could probably do in your senior centers. I know Laguna Niguel is doing a program right now with high school students interacting with people who are taking part in senior centers and teaching each other different skills. The high school students, for instance, teaching the older adults technology and teaching them the slang that they use and what it means. For instance, what does IRL mean? Teaching them how to use those kinds of words. So purpose is a very important, essential issue that affects both our health span and our lifespan. We talked today about 4 powerful trends that are converging, impacting the whole concept of ageless aging. For one thing, we're experiencing a longevity bonus, even in the middle of COVID. Although we've seen life expectancy go down ever so slightly, longevity experts tell us it's going to continue to rise. At the same time, we're seeing this new generation, this generation of boomers beginning to move into their longevity, into their aging years. In addition to which, this whole idea of matching health span, the number of healthy years to our lifespan, is becoming increasingly important and something that social services in the world of aging, as well as senior centers, have to really pay even more attention to than they have been paying. And the question remains, how do we do that? How do we improve wellness in the new normal? We talked about a few ways. You're doing a bunch of things already. Let's find some new and exciting ways to bring our health span to better match our lifespan. Thank you all for your time, for your energy, and for moving us forward into this whole world of ageless aging.
Thank you, Maddie, for that amazing presentation. I got chills. That commercial with the grandpa. Oh, I've seen it before, but never so long. It was amazing. So thank you for that. Now we're gonna, obviously we've got Maddie here. We're gonna go live to her. We have a couple questions that we want to answer. And again, as a quick reminder, if you have something specific you would like to ask Maddie, add that into the chat box, or excuse me, the Q&A box, which is in the bottom right part of your screen. We do have time for a couple questions. So first off, what are your thoughts on ageism in today's society?
Good question to ask, Steve. I talked about it a little bit in my presentation because it's such an important issue. And one of the things I said is it's kind of pervasive. It's in the very air we breathe, and it impacts young people and older people. I mean, we all, no matter how old we are, we believe some of these ageist thoughts. And what's really odd to me is in our society that it's okay to feel ageist. I mean, racism and genderism, sexism, those are not okay anymore. I think we need to take the same attitude towards ageism. And according to the World Health Organization, they identify ageism as one of the urgent issues of our era. I mean, that's how important it is. So one question that becomes, oh, by the way, before I even talk about how to fight ageism, which I'd like to do for a minute, there's some things that we ought to know, and that is that ageism actually can impact life expectancy. It can shorten lifespans for us. So that's something to keep in mind, and health spans as well. So how do we fight it? Well, first we raise our awareness that we're thinking ageist thoughts probably all the time. Maybe if you're in your 70s like me, you think I'm too old to try something new or to take on a new sport. That's just not the case. So we've got to rid ourselves of these kinds of thoughts. And second, we need to recognize that there are gifts that come with aging, and we've got to embrace them, like wisdom and experience. And from one of the age wave studies that we just recently have completed, that whole muscle of resiliency, of being able to bounce back from something bad happening, like COVID, for instance, we're pretty good at that. So we ought to embrace those gifts of aging.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
What advice do you have to retire and age successfully?
Retire and age successfully are not the same things exactly. First of all, age successfully, that's a very big question. And there's all kinds of things that we can do. And it's kind of a holistic exercise. I mean, we talk about exercise. And by the way, according to the MacArthur studies on successful aging, the #1 thing we can do to sort of bring our youth with us into our second and third parts of our lives is to just walk 30 minutes every day. So I think we could all do just that. But successful aging is not necessarily something that's connected directly with retirement, because we see so many people retiring, maybe taking early retirement, but also people retiring later. For instance, I'll use myself again as an example. I'm 71 and I'm still very much involved in work, and I plan on being for a while. But the key thing about retirement is planning for both the financial and the non-financial aspects of retirement. And we've learned this through our studies. I mean, yes, you've got to make sure you've got some money so that you don't end up broke at the end of your life. In addition to which, though, there's non-financial things, and I've already talked about a lot of them. One is, your health, your well-being, your social connectivity, and most importantly, in some ways, is finding a sense of purpose.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I hope you don't consider retiring anytime soon. Your knowledge is vast and can do a wealth of good, especially in these days and these times in the pandemic
Thank you.
as we come out of that. Transitioning from your home to a senior community or assisted living can be a challenge. What recommendations do you have to help facilitate and transition into those pieces?
Yeah, well, first, just from our studies, what we have learned is that most older adults would prefer to what they call age in place rather than move to a new place, move to a senior community. And although there's probably some value in that at different points in your life. So aging in place is the number one thing that people want to do. However, lots of people have more than one move in their life after retirement. They may move to live closer to their grandchildren, or to live close to the beach, or maybe to pursue a hobby, or maybe just to live life better and less expensively. Like moving from California to anywhere else is probably a good move, although I'm not trying to encourage people to leave California. Yeah, you could save a lot of money. So there's that move. And then when people get a little bit older, sometimes in their 80s, sometimes later, if they're starting to feel a little more vulnerable and maybe that they need some potential services that can be offered in senior communities, that's when they start looking for these kinds of senior communities. So I don't think it's a one move thing. I think it's a process, and it's a process based not necessarily by chronologic age, but by lifestyle and the kinds of things that are going on in your life in terms of your health.
I agree again as well. We're getting so many comments, not a lot of questions as much as comments about thanking you for the presentation, an incredible presentation. One suggestion somebody had, Linda said, was have a purpose is a really wonderful thing to have. And others have said fighting ageism is a huge challenge, and it can be accomplished by exactly what Maddy said. Keep trying and don't give up. That's a great, I think, another wonderful suggestion for that. What resources do you recommend for seniors? Where can they turn to as they transition into a senior?
Well, I don't even know what that means, senior, to be honest with you. As we move through life's different stages and hit retirement, and maybe are looking for ways to, or maybe we need help. I mean, maybe we need some kind of help in our community. I mean, the senior centers and the senior resources, like caring for people, caregiving. I'm living a little bit too much here, but what I'm trying to say really is that I don't think age should define who we are and what our needs are. But if you are looking for resources, I think the senior centers are a great place to start. I mean, they can be like command central that can maybe send you to the different places that you need to be. In addition to which, there's some resources out there like books. For instance, my co-founder of AgeWave and husband, Ken Dychtwald, recently wrote a book called What Retirees Want, that is a fantastic resource that can help older adults as they're moving through and to and through retirement to figure out what their needs are, what their wants are, and how they want to live their life. And you could really learn a lot just from picking up that book. So little plug there.
Yeah, no, I get that. One of the things, you just shared about the senior centers, that all the large cities in Orange County, and we're talking specifically Orange County, have a senior center. For my city where I live in, La Palma doesn't have a senior center. Most of our seniors go to Buena Park, which has a very robust and large program for seniors to attend, which I think is fantastic. A couple of the notes we had before, one was like in terms of for the gift bags. One of the things that they had mentioned was the Oasis Senior Center in Newport Beach has the swag bags. The Norman B. Murray Center in Mission Viejo has bags. Dorothy, I think it's Visser or Vicer in San Clemente, I think that's it, has bags. The Garden Grove, the Lewis Lake Senior Center, Garden Grove has bags. Boyden Park, Stanton, Yorba Linda, and Tustin all have of those goodie bags, swag bags, if you will, not goodie bags, I should say swag bags. Have those for you. So when we rebroadcast this presentation, Maddy's and all the rest of them, we've been able to, you'll be able to utilize those pieces into it. So Maddy, thank you very, very much for all your wealth of information. Your presentation was amazing. And we appreciate you being here.
Thank you. And I hope the rest of the meeting goes great. Seems like you're off to a pretty good meeting here.
We do. Our conference, we have one more presenter, and he is probably our most anticipated speaker because he's going to touch on something called love. So,
love it.
So
love, right?
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, like I said, our most anticipated speaker is Tom Blake. That's right. We left romance, love, and dating for last. So time to buckle up and kind of listen. Tom Blake has been a newspaper columnist in Orange County since 1994. Having written 4,200 columns and email newsletters, Tom writes for the Dana Point Times, San Clemente Times, and the Capistrano Dispatch, plus 6 other newspapers in Pennsylvania. Tom publishes a complimentary weekly On Life and Love After 50 Plus e-newsletter with over 3,000 subscribers. He is the author of 5 printed books and several ebooks. Tom has been on the Today Show and Good Morning America, and of course, several local talk shows as well. He is native of Jackson, Michigan, has a BA from DePaul University, Greencastle, Indiana, and an MBA from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Tom and his partner Greta reside in Dana Point. So now we turn it over for Tom's presentation, and we have Q&A after, but we'll see you afterwards.
Good morning. My name is Tom Blake. We're going to talk today about senior dating in the digital age during and after the pandemic, and the emphasis is on, hopefully it's after the pandemic. We'd like that to end, okay? I'd like to start this morning mentioning how my writing began, because I was not a writer back in 1993. I was a deli man. I had a deli and served sandwiches. That's what I did. On Christmas time, I went to Santa Rosa, California, to be with my 83-year-old mom. My wife of 6 years and her 2 boys stayed in Dana Point. The day after Christmas, in the morning, Mom and I are sitting around the breakfast table enjoying each other's company and breakfast, and the phone rings. Now, this was not a cell phone because we didn't have them back then. It was just a regular wall phone. And it was my wife. And she said, "Hi, honey. We had a good Christmas. The weather's been warm. I've been busy at work, and we moved out." I went, "What? What do you mean you moved out? Where did you go?" I was very puzzled. And she said, "Everything's okay. I just wanted to give you a heads up." Bang, she hung up the phone. Obviously, that phone call rocked my world. I told Mom, I said, "I've got to get in the car and drive back to Dana Point. I've got a lot of things to think about." I had a million thoughts going through my mind. Why did it happen? Why didn't we talk about it? What about the deli? What about my dogs? All that stuff. So I got in the car, and I had a notepad that I put on my lap, and I had a pen, and I wanted to be careful driving. I didn't want to be distracted, although I was very distracted, but I didn't want the writing to distract me. Keep in mind, I'm not a columnist. I am just a deli guy going to return home back to Dana Point. During the trip, I wrote down these, not sentences, but just a word at a time, like why, Why didn't we talk about it? Stuff like that. Well, I got back to Dana Point. 2 weeks later, I'm in my deli serving lunch. We have customers there and we have employees there. And a guy walks in and he said, "Are you Tom Blake?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Tom Blake." And I was excited because might be a new customer. We needed new customers. How may I serve you? He handed me, he said, "I'm serving you." And he handed me some papers, which I took. He said, "Those are your divorce papers. You're just being summoned, you're being filed for divorce." I couldn't believe it. I would go home at night and that little notepad that I had started to write and make my notes on, I would write down my thoughts because I needed to be able to go back and see when this happened or that happened. Well, the divorce happened very soon. Every night I wrote on that notepad. And then I started to date a guy 54 years old. Just got dumped by my wife, divorced. Jotting things down. I had good dates, bad dates, first dates, last dates, sad dates, you name it. Wrote it down. This went on for 4 months. Finally, I said, I'm going to stay home. And I'm going to take those notes in this journal that had become quite large. And I'm going to put them into a short story, which I did. Oh, now I've got this. What do I do with it? Well, why don't I send it off to some media outlets? Maybe somebody would want to do an article. So I sent it to the New York Times. No reply. I sent it to Esquire magazine. No reply. I sent it to Playboy. Too boring. Okay. I sent it to the LA Times. Finally, to the Orange County Register. They responded. And they said, why don't you send that information to our 2 editors at the Dana Point News and see if you can have a meeting with them. Well, that's what I did. They said, what'd you have in mind? I wasn't prepared for the question. So I went, maybe I could be a columnist writing from the man's point of view about a guy that just got dumped by his wife. And they said, that's what we thought. Because the women of South Orange County are going to go, oh my gosh, this guy feels so sorry for himself. And they would have a field day with it. Became a columnist July 7th, 1994. 7 months after that adversity, after that phone call rocked my world. I had taken a sad moment and seen a seed of opportunity come from it. Wow, I'm a columnist. 26 years ago that was. I've written more than 4,100 newspaper columns and email newsletters that I send out every Friday to a mailing list of about 2,000 people, and you can receive that by just going to the websites and stuff I'm going to talk about. I'm sorry I got a pen in my hand because I'd like you to have a pen so that we can talk. You can write down some of the things, websites, and my Gmail address, because we'll want to communicate, okay? So I wrote for a year, and I took the columns, 51, 52 of them, and put them in this book. This was my first published book, and I mention it mainly because I'm pretty proud of the back cover. The endorsements. The big endorsement for me is my friend, country and western singer Johnny Cash endorsed this book. And he said, in the 20 years I've known Tom Blake, he's become an expert on dating. Now, I didn't know how Johnny knew that, but I figured it was probably because I'd spent a lot of time for 2 years with Johnny and June Carter, his wife, and their band. And I'll admit, I appeared with a few different women, and I think that's what gave Johnny the idea. So today we're going to talk about the senior dating. Okay. I have to say this up front. It is more difficult for senior women than it is for senior men because of the dreaded ratio. And what do I mean by the dreaded ratio? It's the number of available single women to the number of available single men at a particular age. So at 50, it's about 1 to 1. By the time we get to age 60, there's almost 2 women, single women, to each single man. Makes it a little more difficult to meet somebody. By the time you get to age 65 and 70, it goes to 3 to 1 and 4 to 1. And you know what women tell me? Some of those guys are not relationship material. Oh, wow. But some of the guys say that about the women too. But in effect, that makes these ratios even more difficult. If one woman has to deal with 5 other women to meet a guy, very difficult. I mention that because it's a fact of life. It's not your fault. You can't do anything about it. Just keep your expectations realistic. Okay? Wanted to say that. Today's topic, we're going to talk about how to begin dating, where to go in dating, internet dating in the digital age. When I started writing in 1994, there was no internet. So we didn't have that tool to use. But this is the way it is now. Okay. Before you can get out and start to get involved and re-involved in life and stuff, and then the dating, you have to be emotionally ready. I'm going to explain to you 5 things that I mean by that. Okay. The first one, oh my gosh, you have to have a positive attitude. If you are bitter or angry about a former love, a breakup, a divorce, and that's all you can talk about, it's a big turnoff. We need to be positive. We need to smile. I need to smile. We need to be happy. That's the first emotionally ready thing you need to do. Next, we need to get the body moving. We all have wrinkles. We all have aches and pains. We may have difficulty walking. Walking is an incredible exercise, but we need to keep the blood flowing. Now, some people have trouble with that because they're either using a cane, they're in a wheelchair, or using a walker. If they can't walk a lot, move their body, that you lift some weights, not heavy weights, critical to keep the body moving. It'll make for a much better situation when you go out there and try to meet somebody, okay? The next thing in being emotionally ready is probably the most important. Social interaction. And the pandemic really put a damper on that, especially for we seniors. We couldn't go out and meet with our family or our friends. We couldn't go to restaurants. We had to wear masks. It was hard, and it was hard on us. Yes, COVID-19 took a tremendous toll of people passing away, but doctors have said that lack of social interaction and meeting with friends is very unhelpful. So this has to be incorporated into our emotionally ready getting out there. Keep our mind active. Do not let your mind go stale. do not sit around. And during the pandemic, it was harder because didn't have as many choices to get out. It's bad to sit around and just watch reruns. I recommend to everybody who is kind of re-engaging in life and getting back out, you create your own little log, a blog, a diary, whatever you want to call it. Maybe call it My New Life, and just jot down at night what you accomplished in getting back out into the world. Oh, today I saw Judy. Last night we went to a movie. Now, we understand the pandemic's not over with yet, so it might be hard. Now, during the pandemic, I was writing. I'm still doing my columns. I've written 4,100 of them or something like that. But I had a little extra time, and I wrote and finished a book about my 26 years of owning and operating this deli. It was a labor of love. It was a huge project. I self-published it on Amazon.com. It's a Kindle book. It's a paperback book. It's 385 pages, and there are over 500 people mentioned. So I was mighty happy to get that published in July. Now, these pictures of books that I'm showing you are available on my website, which I'll give you the address at the end. And I have a bookstore on there. So if you go to the website, you click on the bookstore, you'll see the books that I have. This one's the most recent one on there. Just started the marketing of it now. Lastly, in emotional readiness, you have to commit to make an effort, because this getting out and re-engaging in life takes energy, it takes time, and it might take even a little bit of money depending on what you get involved with. But make the commitment to get out there and restart your life. Next, we're going to talk about where do we go? Geez, Tom, you're telling us to get out there, but don't know where to go for sure. Well, I'm going to recommend 3 things today. Oh, senior centers. Can you imagine what a gift to us, to seniors? Friendly people who get it. They understand our situation. There's activities. There's new friends. Wonderful places. Now, what I want to do this morning is read to you, paraphrase, an email from a lady in Pennsylvania named Ginny, who has a senior center story. Now, just going to bear with me on it. Ginny wrote, 8 years ago, as a widow at age 72, now that makes Ginny 80 now, I decided I wasn't going to join just women's groups, so I found the local senior center here in Pennsylvania. It's a happening place. I am now on the console there. Ginny says, I first spotted Harry, an old friend from when I was in junior high and he was in high school, so he's 7 years older, making him 87 now. Saw Harry shooting pool at the senior center with the guys. I went back often because he recognized me right away. Imagine, he had been married 59 years. He was a widower. After a few more visits to the pool room where the guys were, Harry asked me on a date. Couple conditions. He did not want to ever get married again. He did not want to live with anybody. He wanted only a friend and somebody to have fun with. Now that came in April from Jenny. In May, I had another email from Jenny, and the subject line was, Harry changed his mind. 87-year-old Harry changed his mind. I thought, oh no. You know, I thought Jenny, I'd written a column about him and I thought it was a great story. But when I read it, It's good news. Harry wanted to get married in November. Gosh, this is great. I wrote a column about it. Here's the cute story. It pertains to the senior center and what can happen when you are out among friends. One of my readers on my e-newsletter that you can sign up for, that I hope you do with the pen, one of my readers is the New York Times wedding journalist, wedding columnist, Tammy Laborse. She signed up for our newsletter because she can read stories like Harry and Ginny's. She gets ideas for columns for the New York Times. In July, she contacted me, asked if she could talk to Ginny. I said yes, I put them in touch. And Ginny writes me and said, we're going to meet to discuss the possibility of our story being in the New York Times. And this happened because of the senior center. Great place to go. What's next? Meetup.com. Now write that down with your pen and your piece of paper that I think you probably have, I hope. This is an incredible tool for seniors to meet people, to get out, to engage. It's an app that lists hundreds of clubs and activities all over the United States, every city pretty much, close to your home, that you can join. Now, granted, you need a computer to find that. Go to their website. If you don't have one, have a friend help you with to book clubs. I mean, endless. Once you sign up and go to them, you don't really need a computer to stay in touch with them, okay? So don't let the fact that you have no computer stop you on this. What's the third place I want to send you to meet somebody to get out? Volunteer. Holy Toledo. When we volunteer, we're giving of ourselves. It makes us feel good. It's healthy to volunteer. Where to go? Well, gee, senior centers is really a great place to start. Here in Dana Point, where my partner Greta and I live, to learn about the ocean. It's not limited to kids. It's adults can go there too. Now, Greta volunteered at in the gift shop at the Ocean Institute for several years. So that's a great place. In San Clemente, Family Assistance Ministries, wonderful charity. They have food and they have clothing and other things for people who are in need. They also need volunteers. Fourth place, I want to share a little story with you on where to go, where to volunteer. Greta and I were staying at a home that she has in San Clemente. And we went in, and walking in with us was a very large German Shepherd. Startled me at first because it didn't have a leash. It had a collar, and it was big, but it was wagging its tail. It was so happy to be with people. I said, well, probably somebody in the neighborhood is out looking for this dog right now. So I got the collar and I tied a little towel t-shirt to it, wrapped it around my hand. We went out, nobody there. Gorgeous dog. Next morning, same thing. Greta and I couldn't keep the dog. She's allergic to a lot of dogs. We weren't quite ready for a dog in our lives. So I took it to the animal shelter that is in San Clemente, but it's tied in with Dana Point, located in San Clemente, and took the dog there. And they were thrilled. Those volunteers at that animal shelter, I'm telling you, are just wonderful people. They tried to find the dog's parents, family. Went to the neighborhood where the dog had come in. Nobody claimed it. Nobody seemed to want it. So they put it up for adoption. I went down to see it one day and it was behind the cage and I just broke my heart. But the next morning, a family, a nice family from Oceanside came in and took the dog home and named him Samson. Volunteering can warm your heart. So those are ideas are where to go. Now, I mentioned we're going to talk about internet dating for seniors in the digital age. Oh my gosh, folks. The internet is probably the best mate-seeking tool you can use that's available. Why? It allows you to reach out beyond your neighborhood, beyond your city limits, beyond your state, even beyond your country. There's thousands of people, thousands of seniors on here. Incredible mate-seeking tool. You do need to have a computer. And in order to stay on these sites, you're going to kind of need the computer. Now, maybe you can pay somebody, if you don't have one, to come in and get on a site or two and see who would be interested in meeting you. Unfortunately, somebody who will be interested in meeting you is probably a scammer. I am so tired of reading about single women and widows who have lost thousands of dollars to these scammers who are perfectionists on how to manipulate lonely people. Widows are lonely people. Some guys get scammed too. But you have to be extremely careful. And I'm going to share a story with you about what happened to a friend of mine whose father, he lives in Dana Point, his father and mom lived in San Clemente. 4 years ago, the husband, his dad, went up on a ladder, cleaning out the eaves trough and fell and died. Younger than I. His widow, Eileen, his widow, waited a year before she decided maybe she would try internet dating. She needed the grief time, the time to recover. So she goes online and immediately meets a guy who's from the United States, he says. Oh, he's overseas working in Nigeria, but he's going to be home in 4 months. And when he gets home, he's going to come out and see her. He lived in the East Coast, I think, Washington, D.C., or she maybe would come there. When he got back, he got her snail mail address from her, and he started sending her trinkets and little gifts to make her feel special. They were probably free by his scamming company. She started to believe that this guy loved her. I kept telling her son, it's a scam. The biggest red flag is I'm working overseas. Don't buy it. Pandemic came. She finally gave up on the guy because the scammer wasn't interested in keeping, because he couldn't come to the US. He wasn't going to come anyway, but he was going to try to get her money. So thank heaven she stopped that. But that can happen on the internet. Never, most important lesson in today's talk, never give money to a stranger. Bad enough giving it to a friend. Just if you're going to give money, don't expect it back unless you get paper signed if you're doing it with a friend or family member. Final point on the internet dating kind of background here, trust your instincts. If someone sounds too good to be true, they are. Let's talk about a couple sites, okay? OkCupid, a free dating site. Quite a few seniors go on it. Free, but they will offer upgrades for a little more money. But still a good place maybe to start and try. I've heard some success stories on OkCupid. How about Plenty of Fish, POF? Another free website. Also, they will offer upgrades for money. What site's best for you? Well, there's Match.com, obviously huge, Senior Singles, eHarmony. There's thousands of sites. Which one's best? One that works for you. Just be careful and know that you're probably going to have to pay a little bit for the most effective use, okay? I show this book, my book, under the internet dating topic, and there's a connection. These people who subscribe to my email newsletter every week, called On Life and Love After 50, by the way, send me success stories, senior success stories, how they met. And I had so many of these about 10 years ago. I said, you know, these can be really helpful to people. So I put them together in a story, and each little story has got how they did it, and the benefits that they learned, the things they got from it besides a mate. Right before we were going to put it out the press, 8 more stories came in. So there was actually 58 stories. My editor said, Tom, don't change all the artwork and stuff. It's going to cost too much money. So there's actually 58 stories. That's 116 people. The thing about the internet is half of them met on the internet. At that time, Match was kind of the big one. eHarmony, there were some. And there were specialty sites, J-Day, religious sites, all kinds. This book, again, is on my website, Finding Love After 50. You click on Tom Blake's bookstore. Also, on that website, you get it, it'll flip it to you here in a minute. There are hundreds of articles, dating articles. You can spend a lot of time on it. Let's go and take a look. Remember I said, got a pen, was holding it up for too long. Write these down. Finding Love After 50, of course, it's a www, is where you can see the bookstore. You can sign up for that email newsletter on the home. You sign me up. Email me with your stories, your questions. Sign up for that. You don't have to sign up. You could just email me if you have stories and questions, and I will get back to you. So I hope this gets you started in re-engaging. Get over to those senior centers. You're already there. We get a lot of them in Orange County. And I really appreciate you taking the time with me today. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you, Tom, for all of that. We're going to go live with some Q&A. Before we do that, you know, I've heard so many stories of not just seniors, but seniors being taken advantage of from somebody overseas, and it just breaks my heart to hear those things. So such really great advice for those, you know, if they're from out of the country, it's probably a scam. Got that. All right. Well, before we get to the questions, we've had a couple of comments that were such a great presentation. The first question they had was from Betty, and she said, what were the ages of the oldest couple that you know have ever met?
Good. The oldest, I think, probably is the couple we described that met in the senior center.
Oh.
He's 87, she's 80. And the update on that is, yes, the New York Times has interviewed them, and I think their story will be in very soon, because their wedding has been moved up to this month, I believe. So that'll be fun to see. But those are, I think, the oldest, but there may be a couple 90-year-olds in there. But
I'm sure. Well, that's fantastic. What are some of the best ways to meet someone to start dating? You've talked about online and in person, but is there one that stands out more than
you know
another?
what, Steve? There's no one best way. The best way is where you meet somebody, but think of it when we were younger and we were looking to get a job, and we would try to get our resume in with several companies. Well, the same idea. You want to spread your net wide. So it's not going to be just online. It's not going to be just going to the senior center. It's going to be a combination of things. And of course, as the speakers have talked about today, the pandemic has made it more difficult to get out. And hopefully that's getting better, but it's still a little bit of an issue. But there's no one way. You've got to put your mind to it and get out there and be around new people.
What advice do you have for someone who is just, like, say they're starting to date, either after being widowed or a different circumstance? What advice do you have?
Take a deep breath first. Start slowly. I suggest that people make a written list of the characteristics that they want in a mate and write them down. I'm talking about a simple list, maybe 10. So they know kind of what they're looking for. That's, I think, very important before you really get out there, because you don't want to waste your time on somebody that's not right for you, and you don't want to waste their time if they're not right. So you just got to start, and you got to be emotionally ready, as we talked about, with the attitude and social interaction and being fit, walking a lot if you can, keep your mind active. All those things are important. So start slowly. Don't try to go to 5 different dating sites at once. Maybe start with 1, might have 2, but get out there and get active at your senior center or at your church, wherever, volunteer, stuff like that.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, in my career of not being a pirate host, but as in doing weddings and events and officiating and things like that, we do a fair number of weddings for those that have been widowed or it's their second marriage, and they are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And it's obviously it's a very different wedding than if somebody was in their 20s or 30s, right? What advice do you have for somebody that maybe has reconnected with somebody from their youth, and they want to rekindle that relationship?
Well, I think the reconnection is a good thing, but there's also things to remember. One, maybe that was 50 years ago, and guess what? He doesn't look the same, and she doesn't look the same. You know, we've got some wrinkles, we got hair this color, and
handsome. That's the color. We call that handsome.
Yeah, here we go, handsome. So while you may have something in common, you went to the same school, played in the same band, whatever it is, that's help, but it may not be what the reality will be when you finally meet. So another big issue is, where do they live and where do you live? You know, I'm from Jackson, Michigan. We live in Dana Point now. Would I ever consider dating somebody from Jackson? Not if they're back there. You know, not even Detroit or Chicago or Des Moines or wherever it might be. So a lot of considerations. Don't think, oh, it's going to be automatic. I'm going to hook up with this person and it's going to be wonderful. I'm going to give you one quick example, Steve. In 2017, a guy from my high school, we were cross country, track swimmers together. He said to me, he was going to go try to meet Sue. His name was Phil. Sue from our class, and he lived in California. She's back in Michigan. And I went, that's a very unlikely couple. Well, he went back and kind of hung around near Grand Rapids, Michigan, and spent some time. And the next thing you know, they write me and tell me they're going to get married. Couldn't believe it. And the next thing we know, they show up at our house, Greta and my house, and it was wonderful. And I couldn't even, I just said, how did this happen? His health wasn't good. 4 months later, he passed away. You know, so you have to realize that somebody older, what's going to happen? Interestingly enough, she went back to Grand Rapids and remarried her first husband after that. So she used the, you know, that as a tool, but I think it's sometimes a bit of a stretch.
And that's obviously a true possibility. Like when my dad lost his wife, my mom, and it was obviously very, very traumatic for him, but when he started dating, he went back to what he knew, which was somebody in his youth, and rekindled a wonderful relationship, and they ended up getting married and had a fantastic marriage.
You know, it's wonderful if wonderful if that happens, but it's just, you know, it's not going to be automatic.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think we got time for just one more question, and then we will let you go.
Okay.
You talked about the red flags in the internet world of people that want to visit or connect with you. They're out of the country. They're not talking, you know, all those types of things. What other red flags do you look for when dating a senior that you didn't think about when you were younger?
Yeah. Well, and not to reiterate, but that red flag of somebody in the internet overseas is just absolutely huge. A red flag, I would say, in the early part of dating, I mean, really, really early, is, let's say, the person you finally have met, you're meeting in person. One of them starts to question the other one about their finances. Kind of a red flag, like, well, you know, give that a little time before you talk about it. Yes, be important to know, you know, do you own your home? You know, do you own your, gee, you're driving a Tesla, that's a really, you know, and this and that. But if somebody is questioning you too much about your finances early, hoist that flag, because they're probably more interested in what you're worth. And if, boy, maybe I can go and live with this person for free or whatever. Huge red flag. Other ones would be, when you meet somebody, if you feel something's not right, too good to be true, trust.
Follow your instinct, basically.
Trust your instincts.
Yeah.
Yes, huge. And listen to your friends. Oh, that guy's wonderful. I'd be careful of that guy. I don't quite, you know, listen to your friends. They may not always be right, but it's important to have that. So just trust your instincts. Huge.
Well, we're going to have to leave that there, Tom. We appreciate it. Everybody that tuned in today, Tom, thank you for your, you know, kind words and great advice to those that are looking for love in different places.
Yeah, just the email is tompblake@gmail.com, and people will send me stuff. I'll get back to them. We can help them.
Tom Blake, thank you very much for being here today.
See you guys. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we again want to thank everybody for attending Turning Silver into Gold, the incredible conference today. We'd love to know what you think, how you think we did. A survey and resources from today's presentations will be emailed to you. If you could, please take a couple minutes to fill out the survey. It truly will help. If you liked what you heard today, please join us for our next Orange County Aging Services Collaborative event, Mastering the Master Plan. That's going to be on November 5th. You can register today on Eventbrite. Information is in your swag bag. If you didn't get a swag bag again, you can go back to your senior centers, the ones that the 5 or 6 that I mentioned earlier. They may have additional swag bags. But you will also be emailed the information if you participated in today's conference. But do note that spots are limited to that. Once again, I would like to thank everybody for turning silver into gold, from the Orange County Aging Services Collaborative to everyone involved in planning the committee, to the sponsors and all of Orange County senior centers. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your time, your support, and of course, your collaboration. We will see everybody back in November 5th. And with that, we say, ahoy, mateys.